Cool, thank you very much. So, first and foremost, I'm Luke. For those of you that weren't here yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday, apologise you get me twice. So, although I am Cotswold Archaeology, for the point and purposes exercise, I am here as the chair of the Health and Safety Group working for FAME. FAME at 50, I thought this was the ideal opportunity to look at FAME through the lens of health and safety. As we've already heard, health and safety being a key part of FAME's mission for the last 50 years. So I'm just going to take you through really a bit of a history lesson, which apologies and caveats if there are any mistakes that anybody who's been here for longer point them out to me afterwards so I don't go too red during. Cool. So the first thing we need to think about is the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the founding piece of legislation on which all of our health and safety is now based. There were bits preceding that, of course, but I'm not doing a health and safety history lecture, so we won't talk about that. A mere year later, 1975, FAME is established as SCUM, something I still love. As I believe it was Kenneth's words, the self-mocking name, which says something about our feelings of our professionalism. So before we go into a very brief timeline of how we got to where we are today, there's a couple of things really to say. Is the reason we are all interested in archaeology, or one of the reasons, one of the philosophies, is how can we possibly go into the future if we do not understand our past? So what I thought to do to demonstrate how health and safety has changed in archaeology over the last 50 years is I put together 3 slides with 3 quotes. So we start in the mists of time in the 1970s. What is health and safety? You can read the quote yourself. You know, how did we survive? No toolbox talks. They survived without toolbox talks. Who'd have thought it? No inductions. Less kit, unless of course you stole it, I assume, or borrowed it. Sorry, commandeered. You know, sleeping in condemned buildings, PPE, the lack thereof, no running water, pubs at lunchtime, pubs at break time, pubs at afternoon break time, pubs in the evening, pub first thing in the morning. And between those, you had a little bottle of something on site to keep you going before the pub. This was a direct quote in response to a toolbox talk I did the other day, which demonstrated to me a slightly older generation's view of how it was and how they respond to some of our toolbox talks, which are going, remember to drink water, everybody, because it's going to be really, really hot. And as we can see from the picture, yeah, what health and safety. So then advancing very quickly to, I went for the late 90s, early 2000s, because 1980s is very similar in many respects. Direct quote, again, PPE, sort of a thing. You got issued a bit of it, and you acquired the rest of it. Able to pick the lock on the PPE locker? Absolutely no comment, never said anything, we'll deny everything later on. At this point, we start to see this kind of variation. We see this sort of growth in professionalism, PPE being the demonstration of that professionalism, the visual optic of it. So when we started, we had absolutely nothing with Erin shorts and literally nothing else, apparently. Lovely. And then we're moving on a bit, and we see a pipeline there from, I believe that's the early 2000s. I'm still unsure whether the chap on the far right at the back there is actually wearing anything under his viz vest, or does he just have a slightly skin-coloured top on? Obviously, bare arms on an infrastructure job these days is a well, that is an offence, obviously, and we start to see as we get into the sort of the 2020s this sort of typical PP, which is very much still being used as it's intended during the winter time here, with everybody togged up in everything and sort of armoured against the elements. And then we have finally where we are today. So post 2020s, again, another direct quote from a colleague who doesn't hold back when I ask, so what do you think, considering you gave me the 70s one? What do you think? Yeah, it can be quite rigid. The professionalism is still there. We still follow this stuff. We are still leading on this stuff within our sector. But often we get to the point where you get this delightful thing. I should have said it's about 30 degrees in that picture, and I wasn't very happy. That, I should say, is flame retardant, and as far as I can make out from the thickness of it, would survive a small yield blast. So that's the optics of where we've got to. So let's go back to fame. So, 1975, scum appears, possibly floats to the surface, maybe, I don't know. Very quickly in 1985, we realised that professionalism was clearly the way forward and we needed to demonstrate that. So we become SCORM, which, if I recall Kenneth's work, could be a direct translation of the German for froth, I believe, yes. See, I did read it. Yeah, I even bought it and everything. A demonstration of where we were going at the time. And then in 1987, the first edition of Health, Safety and Field Archaeology is produced, which for the time was incredibly detailed, and actually an awful lot of the information contained within it is still the basis of what we do today. Ultimately, there's only so many ways you can be healthy and safe. You know, since then, nothing has changed in terms of don't walk out in front of the machine. So then in 1991, we get a second edition. 97, we get a third edition. 2002 is the fourth and final edition. This one with a CD-ROM. Wow, we were modern. That lasted forever, didn't it? Yeah. And in 2008, SCORM became fame. Now we seem to have, the manuals were given up because at that point in time there was a certain realisation of liabilities. If you're issuing this as guidance and that's being taken as guidance, all of a sudden fame is taking the liability of health and safety. Anybody following that gets it wrong. It's now fame's problem. So at that point, the manual stopped being published. So in 2012, the original Health and Safety Working Group was established by Andrew Townsend in response to CDM. And that really was the formation of the modern group from my research. Again, thank you to my research partner, Mr. Poor. Now, sadly, I believe 2015, Andrew died, and that was that. The group went into a little bit of a period of abeyance. And getting the band back together in 2016, and of course, since then, the rest is history. We have never looked back. By all accounts, this very much started as a certain amount of discussion, networking, possibly at a forum, possibly alcohol was consumed during these discussions, so I'm told. And the group reformed around the new chair, Dan Poor, who ran it until, I forget when, fairly recently. And that group then first met in 2017. The last time it met in person was 2020, which was a bit of a shame, really. Things happened at that point. I don't know, something happened in the world that meant meeting in person wasn't such an exciting thing anymore. However, in terms of the benefit to fame and to the archaeological profession, actually there were great benefits to that, because instead of it being the same 5 or 6 of us that could make it to the Oxford Archaeology offices in Oxford as a nice central location, or indeed I believe the last one was held at Wessex, if I recall rightly. All of a sudden we did it by teams, this new and exciting invention where we can talk to each other from afar and see each other. And all of a sudden now we have a regular membership that can turn up from anywhere at any time. And then from there, we started to think about what we actually want to do as a group. At that point, we were not a talking shop. We discussed facts. We raised issues. We discussed them amongst ourselves. We suggested advice to people. But at that point, we started to actually start to codify this stuff, put it down on paper. The first technical paper was, again, on CDM, rather appropriately, a perennial issue that doesn't seem to go away. No matter how many times I desperately try to get it to go away, it keeps coming back as the legislation is reviewed every 5 years or so. So that brings us to the present day and what what health and safety meets at FAME. So we have around 14 people turn up regularly, more are welcome all the time. They're from across, they can be some CEOs, some health and safety professionals. We have people coming along who are not FAME members in a advisory role, and that's really useful to have people like the regulators turn up. This inputs into the technical notes, which those of you at the AGM will have heard about already. Into the toolbox talks and sector guidance. These come out fairly regularly. They are submitted by members, particularly of that group. We also, as a group, are doing more and more cross-sector engagement and collaboration. So whether that's with our friends at Highways, with CIFA, working on the other perennial problem of CSCS cards, which again, I really don't want to talk about this year. And indeed, we respond as a group to other issues and things like the big infrastructure projects where there's a lot of, the frameworks, this kind of thing. We're involved in that as a group. And it's really beneficial for all of us to use the expertise of those few and then be able to ferry that out to everybody. So just moving forward, where are we going with this then? So again, I'm not going to read my own words. Our group will continue to identify, develop new mitigations, new guidance. We've got stuff in the pipeline coming out already. Yesterday, for those of you at the workshop, we had our proto draft almost of our guidance on new starters, which we hope will be useful for everybody. Again, opportunities for collaboration. I did note ACRA earlier and think, oh, that would be interesting. Let's see what we can do there. And we're always looking for new members as well to come along and add your expertise from your different areas. Predominantly the group at the moment are predominantly fieldwork units. A lot of them do have consultancy and other specialist areas of interest, but it is generally people who are thinking about fieldwork. That is not the only place where health and safety exists. So anybody doing the geophysical side of things, the geomatic side of things, the new and exciting drones. For anybody who's been playing with drones, that's a whole world of health and safety that even I don't want to think about. So I would encourage anybody to please drop Doug a line and come on down and moan with the rest of us. So just to finish on then, really, looking forward. We've done this for 50 years. Where are we going? It's a slightly post-apocalyptic thought there. I do apologise for the way my mind works. I probably had read the news before I put this slide together. But in all seriousness, as long as FAME keeps going, this is going to be part of our core mandate to do health and safety, to deliver this kind of thing. And though hopefully I'm not standing here in 2075 talking about radiation contamination, hopefully somebody will be. Thank you.